fake bride and millionaire CEO trapped in a Livestream house, one secret broke, the internet. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The wedding hall glowed with golden chandeliers, a picture-perfect scene broadcast live to millions of viewers. Roses lined the aisle, champagne glasses clinked in the background, and a string quartet played softly. On the surface, it looked like the most glamorous union of the year. But behind every camera angle, a secret contract was keeping two strangers bound together. She adjusted her veil nervously, her fingers trembling as the weight of the gown pressed against her shoulders. She was not here for love, she was here for survival. Her mother's medical bills had stacked high, collectors knocking on their shabby apartment door every week. The contract had promised safety $100,000 wired into her account after 6 months of playing the perfect wife. She told herself it was only acting, just acting. At the other end of the aisle stood the groom, impeccably dressed in a tailored black tuxedo, his jawline sharp, his eyes unreadable. He was the young CEO everyone in the country knew by name. Cameras adored him, shareholders worshipped him, and tabloids chased his every move. But he had a problem. His family demanded stability, his board threatened his position, and scandal lurked in every shadow. A wife, any wife would silence the storm. But instead of love, he had chosen control. A marriage on paper, a bride without power. As the officiant cleared his throat, announcing the ceremony live, the world leaned closer to their screens. Comments poured across the broadcast. She is stunning. Is she really in love with him? This looks like a fairy tale. None of them knew the truth, that the vows were rehearsed lines, that the smiles were contracts signed in ink, that this marriage was built on conditions, not emotions. When their hands finally touched, her pulse jumped. Cold, controlled. A reminder of the boundary written in bold in their agreement. No intimacy, no emotions, no crossing the line. She forced a smile, while his lips curved into a performance-worthy smirk. The cameras flashed brighter. A drone hovered above, capturing the perfect kiss scene. He leaned closer, pausing just inches from her lips. The crowd erupted with applause, but she could feel it, he was only playing his role. Their lips barely touched, just enough for the camera, just enough to sell the illusion. Yet, in that fleeting second, a strange thought slipped into her mind. What if the audience could see through her eyes? What if they could sense the lie? What if the most expensive wedding of the year was nothing more than a staged drama? And then it struck her, this was not just a wedding. This was a cage, a house of glass where millions of strangers would watch her every move, every smile, every fight. For 6 months, she would be locked in a Livestream house with the man who signed her into silence. The officiant declared, "You may kiss the bride," as the camera zoomed in closer, broadcasting the moment to the entire world. The chat exploded with fireworks, hearts, and praise. But behind her faint smile, her heart whispered the truth. This is not my happily ever after. This is a contract I cannot escape. Little did she know, one secret hidden inside that house would not only shatter the contract, but also break the entire internet. The morning after the wedding, the reality of the contract pressed down heavier than the diamond ring on her finger. She awoke to the soft hum of hidden cameras. Every corner of the house gleamed with spotless perfection, but the air felt heavy, staged, almost artificial. This was not a home, it was a set. She pulled the curtains aside, sunlight spilling into the room. And there it was again, red lights blinking on the walls, a reminder that millions of eyes were watching. A faceless audience dissecting every step, every glance, every pause between breaths. Downstairs, he was already seated at the long marble dining table. A perfect breakfast lay arranged in symmetrical plates, untouched. His posture was straight, his suit pressed, as if he had stepped out of a magazine cover. Yet, his tone was clipped, his gaze sharp. "You are late," he said, his voice cold but steady. She clenched her jaw, taking the seat across from him. I did not know punctuality was part of the contract. It is part of survival, he replied, setting his fork down with deliberate precision. We are being watched. Every second. If you slip, I slip, and I do not slip. Her chest tightened. The rules of their paper marriage were already suffocating. No mistakes, no warmth, only performance. She reminded herself of the agreement. 6 months, then freedom. 6 months, then her mother's hospital bills would no longer haunt her. Midway through breakfast, a disembodied voice echoed through the house an announcement from the Livestream producers. Today's audience challenge. Couples must prepare a home-cooked meal together, and viewers will vote on chemistry. The losing couple faces a penalty. She froze. He raised an eyebrow, clearly annoyed. Cooking side by side meant chaos, exposure, intimacy he had no intention of offering. But there was no escape. Cameras shifted closer, drones humming above their heads. In the kitchen, she reached for the apron, tying it around her waist. He stood stiffly at the counter, unwilling to loosen his tie. She tried to break the silence. "Do you even know how to cook?" His lips curved in a faint smirk. "I know how to order chefs. That is all I need." The clash was immediate. She diced onions with clumsy speed, while he criticized her every move. She tried to stir the pot, but he leaned over, adjusting the heat as if she were incompetent. Sparks flew, not the romantic kind, but the kind that drew laughter from the Livestream audience. Comments flooded across the screen. "They fight like a real couple. Is this love or war? I cannot stop watching." And yet, in the chaos, something unexpected happened. She nicked her finger with the knife. A sharp gasp escaped her lips. For a moment, the world seemed to still. He reached out instinctively, grabbing her hand. His grip was firm, his eyes locked on the small drop of blood. Without hesitation, he pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, wrapping her finger with surprising care. The camera zoomed in. The audience chat exploded with heart emojis, screams, and speculation. "Did you see that? He actually cares." Her breath caught. For a split second, the icy mask he wore cracked, revealing something almost human beneath the CEO's polished surface. But just as quickly, he pulled back, clearing his throat. "Be more careful," he said flatly, returning to his station. She stared at him, her mind a storm of questions. Was that a slip of genuine concern, or just another performance for the cameras? Dinner was eventually served, imperfect but complete. The audience voted, and surprisingly, they won the challenge. The reward: a night free from scripted tasks. As the house lights dimmed and the broadcast ended for the day, she sat alone on the couch, replaying the moment in the kitchen, the way his eyes had softened, the warmth in his hands. Maybe, just maybe, this marriage of lies would reveal something real. The following days inside the Livestream house felt like walking on glass. Every sound echoed louder. Every glance was magnified by the relentless cameras. The audience loved the spectacle of mismatched newlyweds, and the producers only fueled the fire by designing challenges that forced them into close proximity. To the outside world, it looked entertaining. To her, it felt like torture. One morning, the producers announced a new task. For the next 24 hours, the couple must share a single routine: one breakfast, one walk, one chore, and one bedtime ritual. The audience erupted online, thrilled at the promise of conflict. She felt her stomach twist. Sharing even the smallest parts of her day with a man who barely tolerated her seemed impossible. At breakfast, she tried to remain composed as he scanned the newspaper, ignoring the food. She finally snapped. "Why are you even here? If all you want is to hide behind that paper." He lowered it slowly, his eyes glinting with irritation. "Why are you here? For money. Let us not pretend otherwise." Her cheeks burned. "I signed the contract, yes, but that does not give you the right to treat me like I am beneath you." The cameras drank in every word, the tension palpable. Online comments lit up. "She has fire." Finally, someone stands up to him. Later that afternoon, they were forced into their shared walk through the manicured garden. The sun glistened on the marble paths, but the air between them was cold. She tried to keep her distance, but the producer's voice blared from hidden speakers. "Stay closer. Hold hands. 2-1. Her heart hammered as he extended his palm, more like an order than an invitation. Reluctantly, she placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, almost possessive, but his eyes were distant. The audience saw a picture-perfect couple. She felt like a puppet on strings. When evening came, the chore of the day was laundry. She carried the basket of clothes while he leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Are you going to watch me work, or are you actually going to help?" she asked, her tone sharp. He stepped forward, grabbing the basket from her hands with unexpected force. "You have no idea how much I sacrificed just to keep this fad intact. You think this is easy? You think playing house with a stranger is simple?" She stared at him, stunned. It was the first time his mask of calm control had cracked in front of her. For a moment, she saw exhaustion in his eyes, the kind that no audience would ever recognize. That night, the final part of the task loomed, the bedtime ritual. They were ordered to read a book together on the couch before the cameras. She held the book stiffly, her voice trembling as she read aloud. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed. The silence between sentences was deafening. Finally, she whispered, almost to herself, "Is this all you want? To prove to the world that you can control everything, even me?" His eyes flickered toward her, the briefest hint of vulnerability passing through them. But then his expression hardened once more. "Do not mistake necessity for desire. You are here because I need obedience, not affection." Her throat tightened, but she refused to look away. "And maybe you need something you cannot admit." Auri fichting. The cameras caught every flicker of their standoff, every breathless pause. The audience at home was glued to their screens, convinced sparks of something deeper were buried beneath the bitterness. When the lights dimmed and the broadcast ended for the night, she lay awake in her room, her mind replaying the argument. Beneath the pride and suspicion, there was something raw in his words, something he fought to bury. She did not know yet if it was weakness, pain, or truth. But she knew one thing for certain: this was no longer just a performance. This was a war of hearts, and someone was going to break first. Days in the Livestream house continued to unfold like scenes from a scripted play, yet something subtle began to shift. The arguments were still sharp, the pride still unyielding, but between the cracks of hostility, small moments of truth slipped through. It started with the simplest of things. One rainy afternoon, the producers announced a sudden challenge. Each couple must create a handmade gift for their partner. Viewers will vote on sincerity. The task seemed harmless, but for her, it carried weight. She had little skill, no luxury materials, and only her heart to rely on. She sat at the kitchen table, scraps of colored paper and thread scattered before her. With trembling fingers, she began to weave a bracelet, clumsy at first but steady with determination. Every knot she tied carried a thought of her mother. Every thread a reminder of why she endured this fad. Across the room, he appeared indifferent, scrolling through his phone. The cameras caught him smirking at her struggle. "A bracelet? That is what you think will impress millions?" She did not lift her head. "It is not about millions. It is about meaning." Her quiet conviction startled him. For the first time, he set his phone aside. Hours later, when the challenge ended, she presented the bracelet crooked, imperfect, but filled with sincerity. He, in contrast, revealed a flawless leather wallet, embossed with her initials, clearly ordered within minutes. The audience voted, and to everyone's shock, her bracelet won. The chat erupted. "That is real love." She put her soul into it. For once, he did not look irritated by losing. Instead, his gaze lingered on the bracelet she had made. He slipped it into his pocket, saying nothing, but his silence carried more weight than words. The next morning brought another unexpected scene. She woke early, drawn by the sound of faint coughing downstairs. She found him in the living room, slouched on the couch, his usually pristine appearance undone. His tie was missing, his sleeves rolled, his face pale. "Are you ill?" she asked cautiously. He waved her off. "It is nothing. Focus on yourself." But she stepped closer, placing the back of her hand against his forehead. Heat radiated through his skin. "You have a fever," she whispered. The camera zoomed in, capturing every detail as she fetched water, a cool cloth, and medicine. She stayed by his side, adjusting the blanket, ignoring the fact that millions were watching. For the first time, Her care was not performance. When his eyes fluttered open, he saw her there, her expression free of judgment or pretense. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice weak but genuine. "Because someone has to," she replied softly. For a fleeting moment, his walls crumbled. He did not argue, did not deflect. Instead, he allowed her to sit beside him, her hand resting lightly against his arm. The cameras caught it all, and the audience filled with speculation. She really loves him. This feels too real to be fake. That night, as the fever broke, he found himself staring at her from across the dimly lit room. Her head had dropped against the armrest, her body curled in exhaustion after tending to him for hours. She looked fragile, yet unyielding. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the bracelet she had made. Turning it over in his hand, he whispered to himself words no one else could hear. Maybe this is real after all. The Livestream house had been built for spectacle, for entertainment, for profit. But within its walls, under the gaze of millions, something deeper was taking root, something neither of them had expected, and something no contract could contain. The days of subtle closeness did not last. What began as a fragile thread of trust was shattered in an instant. It happened during a live broadcast challenge. The task was simple on the surface. Answer questions from the audience with honesty. They sat together on the velvet couch, lights glaring, the cameras broadcasting every shift of expression. Questions scrolled across the screen, playful at first. Who cooks better? Who snores louder? But then one message appeared that froze the air. Is it true this marriage is fake? The room went silent. She felt her breath catch in her throat. He leaned back, his jaw tightening, his eyes flickering with restrained fury. The producers did not intervene. The cameras zoomed in. Millions of viewers waited for an answer. He forced a smile, smooth but strained. "Do you really think I would put my company and reputation on the line for a joke?" His voice was calm, but beneath it she heard a storm. Before the moment could pass, another message flashed across the screen. This time, it was not a question, it was evidence. A leaked document, projected onto the live chat feed, displaying the very contract they had signed. Terms, conditions, signatures exposed in brutal clarity. Gasps rippled through the live audience feed. Comments flooded the screen. It was all a lie. They fooled us. She is a gold digger. He is a fraud. Her chest constricted. She looked at him, hoping for guidance, for reassurance, but his eyes turned toward her with a glare sharp enough to pierce through her soul. In that instant, he did not see her as a partner. He saw her as the traitor. "You," he whispered under his breath, his voice laced with venom. "Was it you?" Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. "No, I would never." The cameras caught it all, the silent accusations, the trembling denial. The internet erupted into chaos. Headlines began flashing across news sites within minutes. Contract marriage exposed. CEO caught in deception. Bride accused of betrayal. The producers ended the broadcast abruptly, but the damage was already done. The house lights dimmed, and silence weighed heavy between them. He stood, pacing the room, his anger like fire threatening to consume everything. "Do you understand what this means? My company could collapse. My family will bury me for this. And you," he stopped, his fists clenching. "You are the only one who stood to gain by leaking it." Her voice cracked as she pleaded. "I swear it was not me. Believe me, please." But he turned away, refusing to look at her. For the first time since the contract began, she felt not only trapped, but condemned. That night, alone in her room, she scrolled through the news on her tablet. Every headline carried her name, painted her as a liar, a schemer, a woman who sold herself for money. She buried her face in her hands, the weight of shame pressing down. The very reason she entered this contract to protect her mother, to find stability, was now unraveling into public humiliation. Down the hall, he sat in the dark, the bracelet she had made still hidden in his pocket. He clenched it tightly, confusion warring with anger. Part of him wanted to believe her, to trust the sincerity he had glimpsed in her eyes. But pride and betrayal clouded his judgment. Neither of them knew that the true culprit was someone else entirely, someone much closer to him, someone with ambition sharp enough to destroy them both. For now, the internet had declared its verdict. The fake marriage had been exposed, and the world demanded blood. The fallout was immediate and merciless. The world outside the Livestream house had turned savage. Every headline screamed betrayal. Every commentator dissected her motives. Strangers hurled insults across social media, painting her as the mastermind behind the deception. Inside the house, silence reigned. He avoided her, his once measured words replaced by cold indifference. Every glance from him felt like a blade. But what the cameras did not capture was the truth. Late at night, while the house slept, she overheard voices through the thin walls of the control room. Curiosity pulled her closer, her bare feet silent against the cold floor. Through a crack in the door, she saw his most trusted assistant, the man who had stood by the CEO's side for years. "Everything is unfolding exactly as planned," the assistant whispered into his phone. "The leak worked. His reputation will crumble, and the board will have no choice but to hand over authority." Her breath caught. It was not her. It had never been her. The betrayal had come from within his own circle, from the person he trusted most. She wanted to burst into the room, to scream the truth, but she froze. The cameras were everywhere. If she exposed the assistant now, he could twist the story, accuse her again, and she had no evidence to defend herself. So she returned to her room, her heart pounding. The bracelet he still carried weighed heavy in her thoughts. She wanted to tell him everything, but when she looked at his cold eyes across the dining table the next morning, she knew he would not believe her. Not yet. Instead, she chose silence. She bore the weight of his anger, the scorn of the world, and the humiliation of the cameras. Day after day, she carried the blame quietly, shielding him without his knowledge. The producers, sensing drama, continued to push them together. They were forced into tasks, their every interaction dissected by millions. Each time, his voice was laced with suspicion, and each time, she swallowed her defense, holding back the truth. But even as he doubted her, cracks began to appear in his certainty. One night, after the broadcast ended, he found her alone in the kitchen, washing dishes long after the cameras had stopped recording. Her shoulders were hunched, her eyes red from tears she refused to shed publicly. "Why do you keep pretending?" he demanded. His voice was rough, but beneath it there was something almost desperate. "If you betrayed me, admit it. If you did not, then why are you suffering in silence?" She turned to him, water dripping from her hands. Her voice was steady, though her chest ached. "Because the truth will reveal itself. And when it does, I want you to remember this moment that I stayed when I could have walked away." His breath caught, though he masked it quickly. He left the room without another word. But that night, lying awake, her words echoed in his mind. For the first time, doubt gnawed at him. If she was guilty, why endure the hatred? Why shield him at all? The bracelet in his pocket pressed against his leg as if reminding him of something he was trying to forget. Meanwhile, the assistant tightened his grip on the chaos he had created. Outside the house, he whispered into board members' ears, promising stability in exchange for loyalty. Inside, he watched the CEO unravel, confident that his plan was working. But what he did not know was that the woman he had underestimated, the so-called fake bride, had already seen his mask slip. And though she stayed quiet for now, the moment of truth was drawing closer. The storm was not over. It was only gathering strength. The pressure reached its breaking point. Shareholders demanded explanations. The family that once paraded him as their pride now threatened to strip him of power. Outside the house, the media swarmed, calling the marriage a fraud and her a liar. Inside, he sat in silence, the weight of the world crushing him. For days, he had lashed out at her, convinced she was the cause of his downfall. But her words haunted him. "The truth will reveal itself. And when it does, I want you to remember this moment." One evening, unable to ignore the gnawing doubt, he replayed security footage from the night of the leak. His blood ran cold. There, in the shadows of the control room, was his assistant. The very man he trusted had orchestrated everything. Rage surged through him, but beneath it was shame. He had blamed the wrong person. She had carried the blame silently, protecting him even when he had given her nothing but suspicion. The next day, during a live broadcast, he made his choice. He stood before the cameras, his voice steady, his gaze unwavering. "I have been accused of deception," he began. the room falling silent. Yes, the marriage began as a contract. That much is true. But what the world has not seen is what happened after. I saw a woman who endured hatred with dignity, who faced lies with silence, who cared for me when she had every reason to walk away. That is not a contract. That is character. That is love. The audience chat exploded. Gasps, questions, and tears filled the screen. He reached into his pocket and held up the crooked bracelet she had made, the one symbol that had outlasted the chaos. "This," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "means more to me than any empire or fortune, because it came from her heart, and from this moment on, I do not care about contracts. I care about her." She sat frozen, tears streaming down her cheeks. For the first time, he turned toward her not as a CEO, not as a man guarding his empire, but as someone who had finally chosen truth over pride. The livestream audience erupted with a new wave of comments. "This is real. Protect her at all costs. True love wins." The assistant who had betrayed him watched from the shadows, his plan collapsing in real time. The battle was not over, but the tide had turned. For the first time since the wedding, she felt the chains loosen. And for the first time, he stood not to protect his image, but to protect her. The storm of public outrage shifted overnight. His confession had turned suspicion into sympathy. But one question remained unanswered. Who had leaked the contract? The world demanded justice, and he was determined to deliver it. Armed with security footage and internal reports, he confronted his assistant in front of the board of directors. Cameras were present, broadcasting live for transparency. The assistant tried to mask his panic with arrogance. "You cannot accuse me without proof," the assistant sneered. "You are just trying to save yourself." But the CEO remained calm, his voice steady. "Then let us show the proof." The screen behind them lit up with the captured footage, the assistant on the phone, his voice clear, admitting to leaking the contract to destabilize his employer. Gasps filled the room. Board members exchanged horrified glances. The assistant's face drained of color. "This is taken out of context," he shouted. But the evidence was undeniable. The CEO stepped forward. "You betrayed my trust, my company, and the woman who stood beside me. You will face the consequences." Security entered, escorting the assistant away as the cameras rolled. The public watched justice unfold in real time. Comments flooded the livestream. Finally, the truth. She was innocent all along. Fire him forever. To you five. For her, the moment was bittersweet. The world no longer saw her as a liar or a schemer. They saw her as the woman who endured, who held her dignity in silence until the truth was revealed. The board, once skeptical, voiced their support for the CEO. The company's reputation began to heal, shareholders rallying behind his leadership. But more than his position, it was his integrity that had been restored. Later, when the cameras dimmed and the noise of victory faded, he found her standing by the window of the house that had been their prison. The city lights flickered outside, but her eyes were fixed on the horizon. "It is over," he said quietly. "The truth is out." She turned toward him, her expression calm yet guarded. "The truth saved you, but it nearly destroyed me." His chest tightened with guilt. He stepped closer, holding up the bracelet she had made. "I will spend the rest of my life proving that I see you for who you are. Not a contract, not a scapegoat. You are the only person who stood by me when everyone else fell away." For the first time, she allowed herself to believe his words. The house, once a cage of lies, had become the place where masks shattered and truth stood tall. Justice had been served, but one step remained their future together. The contract was broken, the betrayer removed, and the world finally knew the truth. Yet inside the glass walls of the livestream house, silence lingered. For months they had lived under the gaze of millions, bound by rules and lies. Now, with the cameras preparing to shut down for the final time, only one question remained: what was real and what was performance? On the last night of the show, the producers invited them to share closing words with the audience. He stood first, tall and steady, but his voice carried warmth instead of coldness. "This began as a contract," he admitted. "A deal to silence the world. But somewhere between the staged smiles and scripted tasks, something unexpected happened. I found someone who cared for me when I was weak, who held her dignity when the world turned against her, who never asked for anything but honesty. I entered this house with a fake bride. I leave with the woman I cannot live without. The audience feed exploded with hearts and cheers. Viewers around the world leaned closer to their screens, waiting for her response. She rose slowly, her hands trembling but her voice clear. When I walked into this marriage, I told myself it was just survival. I never thought I would find something real in a place built on lies. But the truth is, somewhere along the way, I stopped acting. I stayed because I wanted to. Not for money, not for obligation, but because my heart chose him. My turn. The room filled with applause, not from the cameras, but from the crew who had witnessed their journey firsthand. He stepped forward, pulling the crooked bracelet from his pocket. With millions watching one final time, he slipped it onto her wrist. "This was made by your hands," he said softly. "Now let me give you something made by mine." From his pocket, he revealed a ring, not part of any contract, not part of any show. Her breath caught as he knelt before her. "Will you marry me? Not for the cameras, not for the world, but for us?" Tears streamed down her face. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking into a smile. "Yes." The cameras captured their kiss, but for once, it was not staged. It was raw, real, unrestrained. The audience erupted, not with outrage, but with celebration. Headlines would soon declare it the love story that defied the odds, the marriage that began as a lie but ended as truth. As the lights dimmed and the live stream cut to black, the glass house stood empty. But for them, the story was only beginning. Because love, once planted in the harshest soil, had grown into something unbreakable.